Okay, shalom, shalom, shalom. Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Barak Atham. Okay. I want to go ahead and get this started. So, first of all, I want to give all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High God, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, in the name of his son. Hey, and we're going to go in today, right? Because what these people want you to believe is that the nation of Israel, the modern state of Israel, uh, is a clean nation. It's the nation of God. It's the place of the Most High God. This, that, and the third, and it's just not the case. Biblical prophecy points to the fact that the real Israelites will not be back into the land until the end times. At which point the Most High God's government will be in place, and everything gonna be clean. Like it's not gonna be. The scripture says that no more shall the unclean thing be in Israel, right? So let's deal with it. Let's deal with it because I want to show you the receipts. I promise y'all this. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, X, Y, and Z. Go visit the North Carolina page as well. This will be on the North Carolina page shortly. But I want to just show you this. And it's got to come out first on Patreon. So the state of Israel was funded by gangsters, right? And we're talking about the original gangsters in the American underworld, right? Uh, the Italians and the Jews and some of these other people that came together to conspire to make these things happen. Now, do we have the receipts? Of course we do. So we're going to go into it, right? Number one thing we're going to take a look at is the FBI records on a website called The Vault. And they have all the FBI declassified documents there. You can find a lot of useful information on that website if you're doing research and you want to see what's real, what's internet banter, and what's actually got facts behind it, right? Then we're gonna go into a brief history of the Jewish crime bosses. We're not gonna deal with that too long, but they had a lot to do with prohibition. They had a lot to do with Las Vegas, the building of Las Vegas, and famous casinos like the Flamingo, and international arms smuggling during World War II. And may I add also, not only international arms smuggling, but illegal, in case you didn't already see that as being implied, illegal international arms smuggling during World War II, right? So, war crimes, international war crimes, all of it, right? Paramilitary operations in America during World War II, the law of return, all right? Let me start right here with Genesis 27 and verse 40. Okay. Genesis 27 and verse 40, because this right here has to be brought out. A lot of people may not understand or know this, but this has to be brought out. And it reads, actually, I'm going to start at verse 39. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and thou shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Right? But it says, By thy sword shall thou live. So Esau was blessed with a blessing that he would be able to make a living off the sword. Right? He will make a living off the sword. So we're going to show you what that looks like. Now, first of all, this information is not anti-Semitic. This information is not false. This information is not uh racist or anything like that. This information is public information. You can go to the FBI records, the vault. If you Google that, the website will come up. It's a .gov website, right? You're looking at it right here on the screen. You can search within that website database. You can go to gangs, extremist groups, the gangster era, all of that, right? So FBI files will pull up for almost everything you search. You type in Kobe Bryant, he'll come up. You know what I'm saying? Anything the FBI database has, they will pull it up for you. Now, I want to start here. So we start our story with Arnold Rothstein. I'm not going to deal with this too long. He was born in 1882, New York City, right? Uh, but some of his associates were Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, who we're going to go into later, Dutch Schultz, and Jack Diamond, right? It says that Rothstein may have done more to corrupt sports and inversely encourage reforms than any other single person in the early decades of the 20th century, right? It was this big thing about the Black Sox scandal, right? That's what they called it because the 1919 World Series was most likely rigged and he was at the bottom of it. So I'm just showing you the influence and corruption that this guy had. He happened to be a Jewish guy, right? But what I want to show you here is that he was influential in the crime scene in general. And he was a forerunner to people like Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano, right? Now, prohibition helped Rothstein reach new heights of power and income. Rothstein was quicker than some of his mobster colleagues to see the huge profits that could come from illegal sales of banned alcohol. Notably, although Rothstein was often considered a professional, even corporate member of the mob, he was also unafraid to use his connections with violent New York City street gangs to further his business interests, right? Now, this is where we get into what we need to be talking about. Meyer Lansky is a guy who was an associate of Rothstein. Rothstein you could say he was a forerunner of Lansky, right? They have a movie called Lansky. You need to go watch it so you can understand who this guy was and what he was down with, right? But he was born to a Jewish family, right? Um, and he was one of the most important figures in the development of organized crime. Now, this is back when, you know, this is during the transition from just going around killing people, stabbing people, racketeering, prostitution, small things to more grand scale, institutionalized and organized crime, right? So he is very influential in that realm. Now, look what it says here. I'm going to read it fast. Immigrating with his family from Imperial Russia in 1911, Lansky's work spanned from pre Prohibition days of the New York City rackets, where he earned early partnership with Benjamin Siegel, who I'm also going to go into. You've heard of Bugsy Siegel before, to the consolidation of the New York mob under Charlie Luciano. Once again, Lucky Luciano. Um, and on the developments of Las Vegas and Havana, Cuba, as open cities for the mob. He controlled casinos in the Bahamas and in London, as well as reportedly a Swiss bank through which he laundered profits. Lansky was short, even-tempered man who provided a calmer counterbalance to hot-headed mob members. He was a key figure in the Jewish wing of the Italian mob that became known as the American Mafia. Now, watch this. These are the things that we got to focus on. Lansky was often referenced as behind the scenes financier who avoided the limelight and the publicity that came with open violence, but his career was associated with violent bootlegging Bugs and Meyer gang, which he formed with Siegel, and with Luciano's violent takeover of the New York Mafia with the murders of Joe the Boss Mazzaria and Salvatore Maranzano, right? Now watch this. I want to show you a couple of things. Despite his efforts to conceal income, in 1970, Lansky was indicted on federal tax evasion. He and his family fled to Israel under the nation's right of return law, but that right did not extend to criminals, quote unquote. We're going to deal with that. Lansky returned into the United States and was arrested in Miami International Airport. He was ultimately acquitted, blah, 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 blah. And then Lansky lived in Miami until his death. Federal authorities claimed that he still had a hidden wealth of $300 million. But of course, Lansky did not disclose that information or where the money was or where it went to. Now, I want you to think about something. The authorities who have been building a case on him, and we know this because the files are in the FBI database, they've been building a case on Lansky for decades. They know how much money he has. They know how much money he's worth and how much money he's supposed to have, right? somehow he got rid of that $300 million. That's not a little bit of money. We talking about in the 80s, right? Before the really big inflation years and all this stuff. And maybe he already had that money put away somewhere, right? Who knows? But in any case, they didn't take it from him. All right. And he ended up dying without relinquishing that money. Now, you ever seen this guy before? Beanie Siegel? You ever heard of that rapper? Well, guess what? He gets his name from the real guy, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. All right. And actually, I'm going to take a moment here to step back and say this. The hip hop scene really weirdly, right? Strangely, the hip hop scene, which some say are controlled by the Jews, is doing a lot of borrowing from Jewish crime bosses. Strange, right? Maybe there's a connection. Now, February 28th, 1906, Brooklyn, New York, right? This is when he was born. Bugsy Siegel, you've heard of him before. Um, Guess what? His associations are with Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano, Murder Inc. You ever heard of Murder Inc., the record label? Like I said, a lot of borrowing from real Jewish gangsters. Well, this guy right here had the real Murder Inc. They was going around knocking people off for the mob. Paid contract killers, man. Right? If you stepped on the wrong people's toes, you was finished. And they was coming to see you. And they would kill you in a variety of different ways. And they had famous hitmen on their squad. They was the real shooters, man. Right? Benjamin Bugsy Siegel rose from the rough streets of New York City to the height of fame and fortune in sunny Southern California, but his violent death helped expose the dark side of the mob life. Now, watch this. The son of Jewish immigrants, Siegel was raised in crime-ridden section of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Right? Uh, in 1918, when he was about 12 years old, he met up with Meyer Lansky. They was friends. Um, and they established their own street gang, Bugs and Meyer gang. You see that? Follow gang members nicknamed Siegel Bugsy in reference to the notoriously quick and violent temper. He was as crazy as a bedbug, right? That's what they say. Now, a lot of this stuff is good. You can come back and read it. And I got a lot of this from the Mob Museum website. You can go to the Mob Museum, I believe, .org, and a lot of this stuff will come up. That's where you see the screenshots and all that stuff from. Siegel wasn't the first entrepreneur to envision something fabulous in the desert, but his dream elevated the stakes. The Flamingo Hotel construction was financed mostly by Eastern crime syndicate bosses under Siegel's direction. So guess what? The Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, was founded by mob money, right? And largely, the development, largely the development of Las Vegas in general is responsible to mob money and the ties that began that movement. Because we know that Meyer Lansky, he had dealings out in Cuba. He was doing casinos in Cuba and in London and all over the place, right? So a lot of these mob guys, they had money all over the place. And they are responsible for starting the Las Vegas crime scene or Las Vegas gambling scene, right? And this is another reason why it's called Sin City. Now we're gonna tie this in. But look at it. The Flamingo Hotel is still a hotel to this very day, right? One of the most famous hotels in Las Vegas. Okay. Now, right here it says helping the Haganah, uh, right? And I can't see it for some reason. This thing is on my screen. It won't go away. Let's go back. Okay. But we're going to go into what the Haganah is. Okay. Established the state of Israel during pre-state Israel, right? So Jewish gangsters also helped establish Israel after the war. This is what I want to show you. Those same names that we went into, there's plenty more that we can go into, but those same names that we just went into, They're going to be major players in helping to establish the state of Israel, right? What is Haganah? It's the main Zionist paramilitary organization. What is a paramilitary organization? It's like a private militia, right? It it's almost like a behind the scene guerrilla warfare type of army thing. And these people are doing things behind the scenes. Well, they are a paramilitary Zionist organization uh, in mandatory Palestine before the establishment of Israel as a state, which means that during this time, you had Arabs there, you had Palestinians there, you had all these people there, and everybody's saying, "Yo, this is my land." Everybody's fighting for this land. But at this point in time, the state has not mandated that anybody's particularly in charge, right? And later on, this same group became the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, which are still the Israeli Defense Force for today, right? So we're going to go into it. Out of the Haganah, which was the original, came this group called the Irgun. Okay. That was a Zionist paramilitary organization that operated in Mandate Palestine right up until 1948. The organization is also referred to as Etzel, an acronym of the Hebrew initials, right? We could go into that. But look at the bottom. It says the Irgun policy was based on what was then called revisionist Zionism, founded by Ze'ev Jabotinsky, right? According to Howard Shakar, it says the policy of the new organization was based squarely on Jabotinsky's teachings. Every Jew had the right to enter Palestine. Only active retaliation would deter the Arabs. So they came in with the mind state, we gonna fight our way in this. Number one, they came in with that mind state. Okay. They came in with the mind state, yo, we're gonna come in, we're gonna fight these people. That's the only way we're gonna get this land. All right. And look at what it says at the end. Only Jewish armed force would ensure the Jewish state. So the Haganah was more moderate, I would say, in their dealings. And the Irgun was like, yo, let's go in and take this. Both of those became amalgamated into what is now the IDF. All right, Israeli Defense Forces. And once again, these are things that you can use for your research later, but it's a good foundational start to understand what's going on over there. So Jewish gangsters helped establish Israel after the war. One famous example is a meeting in 1945 between who? Bugsy Siegel and Reuven Daphne, a Haganah emissary. Now, Daphne was seeking funds and guns to help liberate Palestine from British rule. Now, once again, this is before 1948, right? So this is before the establishment of Israel as a nation state. And Daphne was seeking funds and guns to help liberate. So behind the scenes, he's seeking funds and guns to help liberate Palestine from British rule. Okay. A mutual friend arranged for two men to meet, right? You mean to tell me Jews are fighting? Siegel asked. You mean fighting as in killing? Daphne answered in the affirmative. Siegel replied, I'm with you. For weeks, Daphne received suitcases from Siegel filled with $5 and $10 bills, $50,000 in all. Once again, this is in 1945. That's a lot of money. No one should paint gangsters as heroes that committed acts of great evil. Rockaway has persecuted a textured Salakia presented a textured version of Jewish gangster history in a book titled But He Was Good to His Mother. One might add that despite their disreputable behavior, they could sometimes be good to their people too, right? And you can find all of this on the website below, right? But I wanted to show you this because it's well documented that Bugsy Siegel provided money and helped this paramilitary organization overthrow a government, overthrow a government, and the people who were currently living in the land of Israel. And they got the money from the Jewish mob. right? This is not speculation, once again. Now, this actually runs in line with the behavior that we see from the United States military and the United States government, actually, because according to the History Channel, right, the America has actually helped overthrow a foreign government. It says 10 times here, but guess what? Plenty of times, way more than 10, but the top 10 are listed here on the screen, right? One of them being Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, right? We spoke about Cuba earlier, but all of these places are in the Middle East, so-called Middle East, and places that were strategic to the locale of Israel, right, as a nation state. All of these locations are either close, they were either enemies of Israel or strong deterrents of Israel at one point in time. Very interesting. So for us to say that the United States government knew about or had some type of dealings with international arms smuggling in order to help the state of Israel gain that land from the Arabs and the Palestinians would not be a reach because they've done it before, number one. Number two, the FBI knew about it, and still to this day, nothing has been done. Let's keep going. You see this? It was in headlines. It's all over the internet. You can Google this right now on your phone. It'll come right up. Right? The FBI's secret file on the Zionist militiamen who raised funds from Jewish gangsters. That's what we were just reading about. How an Israeli professor discovered surprising information linking Peter Bergson, who worked during 1940s in the US, to help the Irgun underground in mandatory Palestine, as well as European Jewry, to some notorious Jewish gangsters. You see that? So these are not things that we're making up. It's a lot of headlines all over the place about it. Let me read this. This is from the New York Times, right? And now we're starting to connect the dots. But this is from the New York Times. Israel's High Court ruled today that Meyer Lansky, the American underworld figure, was not entitled to Israeli citizenship, even though he is a Jew. But at the same time, the government said that it would offer Lansky a travel document to let him go to any country that would take him. So listen to what's being said, right? After the war, Meyer Lansky wants to go to Israel to get away from the persecution of the FBI in the United States. So he says, I'm gonna go to Israel. They'll let me in because they got the law of return. Right now, he's a big time gangster, mob boss, this, that, and the third. And everybody knows it's no secret. So he tries to go, and they say, nah, we can't let you in, but we will give you a document that'll let you go anywhere you want to go. Right? Lansky ended up suing for permission, and the courts upheld it and would not let him come in. They say because of his criminal past. Right? Now, we know that that's not true because later on, I'm going to show you a document. I'm going to show you some receipts where certain Jewish gangsters were allowed into Israel on the law of return, right? But let's deal with what this rabbi says, Rabbi Rachel Esserman. Unfortunately, it seems that in contemporary times, some accused of crimes are abusing the right to return to escape justice. A report by CBS News has found that Americans accused of abusing children have fled to Israel in order not to be tried for their crimes. The Jewish Community Watch, an American group that started tracking accused pedophiles in 2014, has identified more than 60 accused pedophiles living in Israel. According to the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, they told CBS that most of its cases originate from modern Orthodox to Haredi Orthodox communities in the US, but that it happens across the wider Jewish community as well. Yo, this is a cut. Number one, y'all letting criminals accused of molesting children come into your land. Not a couple, over 50. And that's only what they've reported. That's only who they found. That's number one. Number two, this is a stain on your community as a whole. Why you got so many sex offenders in your community and you such a small population, and y'all supposed to be the people of the Most High God, right? This is a damaging testimony against their people and against the fact that they're the Jews, because guess what? How are you able to do that and still go to the land of Israel when the Bible does not say that's how that's going to go down? Right? The Bible does not say that's how that's going to go down. All right. Let's look at it. It says it does seem there is blame on both sides of the ocean for what is occurring. The Jewish community in the U.S. seems unwilling to push for extradition because a trial would highlight abuse in the community. You see that? They don't want to do nothing because a public trial would bring light to the evils and the wickedness that's going on. And that's bad publicity. That makes the US government less interested in pursuing justice. It's also been reported the Israeli police do not put a high priority on finding these men. I'm showing you a pattern of evidence. We see that Israel was established on blood money, on drug money, on prohibition money. We see that gangsters were allowed to fund a paramilitary operation during a world war, right? During a world war, uh, and after, of course, but during and after a world war, in order to overthrow the current government that was in that land and establish the state of Israel. We have the receipts. We just read all of that. Now, even further, you're allowing those same criminals into your land. And not only those criminals, but more petty criminals, because I have I have reason to believe that I don't want to publicize this because it will make my community look bad. Now, if we bring this information out, we're going to be called anti-Semitic. If we bring this information out, we're going to be called everything under the sun, right? But the receipts is there and it's not hard to find. None of this stuff I had to pay for. This is on public, open websites, FBI.gov, right? The vault. We looking at New York Times headlines. We looking at Jewish websites that's writing about it, right? That's where I got this one from. So this is not hard to find. All right, let's go ahead and bring this home. Joseph Stacher was a Jewish syndicate leader who helped bring together the Jewish and Italian mafia, right? A syndicate leader. Now look at the hand signal, right? It's always the hand signal. But look, Joseph Stacher was born Jadel Ostasizer or whatever, right? In Russia around 1902. He immigrated with his family to the United States. And as a teenager living in Newark, New Jersey, became friends with who? Meyer Lansky and Abner Zwillman. Abner Zwillman is another one of these bosses, man. Right? He got a lot of dirt. He got a rap sheet. All right. He attained U.S. citizenship in May 1930, but his naturalization was later revoked. Now watch this. By 1920s, Stacher was running much of Zwillman's gambling operations. Right. And I wanna see something real quick. He immigrated with his family in 1912. That man hit the ground running. 8 years later, he was running much of the gambling operations under Zwillman. 1931, Stacher helped Meyer Lansky organize a conference of Jewish organized crime leaders at the Franconia Hotel, which later would see the alleged merging of the Jewish and Italian mafia into a national crime syndicate, running West Coast and Caribbean gambling operations for Lansky during the 30s, as well as becoming a silent partner of movie studio Columbia Pictures in the 30s. Stacher would later supervise gambling in where? Las Vegas. You see how, and we dealt with this before in a live class. They money stay in pocket. They money stay in pocket. They make sure that when they got some money, yo, it's gonna go this way, it's gonna go that way, but it's all coming back home, right? Stacher continued running mafia gambling operations until 1964 when federal authorities arrested him for tax evasion, while the U.S. government, now watch this, that's 1964, while the U.S. government was in favor of deporting him to his native Poland, Slovakia, federal law prohibited deporting anyone to a communist-controlled country. However, because of the law of return, stature was allowed citizenship in where? Israel, and successfully immigrated there in 1965. While living in Israel, he served as what? The primary source of Israeli journalist Dennis Eisenberg, Uri Dan, Eli Lando for a biography of Meyer Lansky. Stature continued living in Israel until his death. Yo, if we just calculate the money that he generated as a criminal, being able to be let go for crimes that they knew he committed, right? For the havoc that they know that he brought down on this land. And they just let that man go, right? And where did he go? He went to Israel. So, like I said, we got the receipts and we're showing you the names. You can look this stuff up. And guess what? It's in the FBI database. It ain't a secret. Everybody knows, right? But there's more. There's a relationship between the United States and Israel. There's a relationship that exists that prohibits you from doing anything, right? The United States-Israeli partnership is rock solid. Now, I want to put something out there real fast. These are mob bosses, mafia hitmen, Israeli mafia, right? All of these things exist. Look up the Israeli mafia, right? Right? Look up the Israeli mafia. But all of these things exist. And let me say something. These people control a lot. And since they control a lot, nobody speaks up because they know what could possibly happen. So let's look at it. The United States is unwavering in its commitment to Israel's security and regional stability. The FY 2022 Appropriations Act includes an additional $1 billion for Israel's Iron Dome defense system, right? So not only all of the other strange coincidental things that we listed off earlier, how Jewish gangster money was used to help fund the war and help prop up Israel during this formative years. They allow criminals to come over there. Now they're allowing mob bosses to come over there. Who's to say they didn't go over there and establish a mafia? And that mafia is now in connection with the mafia that's in the American government, right? That's the only next step. Think about it. Organized crime could be on the governmental level, right? Let's look at this. U.S. is committed to Israel's security. Look at that last line, 2016. I bring this out at camp all the time. The United States and Israel signed a 10-year, $38 billion memorandum of understanding on U.S. foreign defense aid, meaning that until 2026, we're going to be giving them money, right? Meanwhile, so-called Black people ain't got nothing, right? Strong economic and educational ties. Once again, the U.S.-Israel economic and commercial relationship is strong, anchored by bilateral trade of close to $50 billion in goods and services annually. So we're just showing you, right? This is not conjecture. This is not reaching. These is facts. There's something going on. There's a strange connection between this land that we live in that we call Babylon the Great and that land over there, right? It's a strange connection. And it's a connection that involves drug money, racketeering money, money that was laundered by criminals, known FBI criminals, people that's still in the database, and they went overseas and was allowed to go overseas. And even their own Jewish community is crying out about this and saying, yo, why are we letting these people come over here? Right? Let me read this last precept for you and we're going to be done. Right? And I need y'all to go ahead and like, share. Hey, leave me a comment. Right? Leave me a comment. I hope this starts your own journey of research. Okay? But this is the book of Sirach, chapter 10, verse 7. Pride is hateful before God and man, and by both doth one commit iniquity. Because of unrighteous dealings injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. Hey, and I want to let y'all know, Esau, y'all not getting away. Your riches gotten by deceit is gonna cause your kingdom to fall. And I'm gonna tell you right now, we waiting on that day. We waiting on that day. All praise to the Most High. Shalom.